Sean Piket with Sales Integrity here. Thank you for listening to the Sales Integrity Podcast. I created a free course for you titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling. To claim your free course, just visit mastercomplexselling.com. Again, that's mastercomplexselling.com, or simply text the word SI course to the number 44222. Again, that's SI as in Sales Integrity. So SI course, all one word with no space in between SI and course. Otherwise, you'll get an error message back. So simply text the word SI course to the number 44222. Now let's jump into the podcast. Now let's chat with today's guest, Barry Saltzman. Barry, are you ready to share some wisdom with Sales Integrity Nation today?
Yeah, Sean, I'm excited to be here, and I'm always excited to share some wisdom with you.
Awesome. I'm real happy to have you here today. So thanks for being on the show. So Barry, nobody can introduce you better than you. So given that, say hello to our audience. Take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself and let us know how you best serve the sales profession as a leader in your current role.
Sure, Sean, thanks. I appreciate that opportunity. Yeah, so I've spent the last 30 plus years working in a variety of leadership roles, mostly in the technology and professional services market. During this career, I've had the pleasure of growing businesses and building teams that have accomplished goals that no one thought was even possible. So Sean, when I think back as to what I'm most proud of, it always seems to come back to people. Hiring people, developing people, trying to get the best out of people, and really stepping out of the way and letting them run their businesses or run their little teams. And I kind of evolved into this role of advisor coach to the people that I was hiring. So no surprise today, my business is really providing advisory and coaching services to business owners and entrepreneurs, mostly here in Chicago. I developed a motto or a tagline, helping individuals and companies reach their full potential. So when I wake up every day, Sean, all I think about is how can I help my clients be better at what they do, or how do I help them reach their goals faster than they think they can? So it's all about potential. It's all about working with people. You know, when I'm not working, I'm a competitive guy, so I play competitive tennis, and I also have ventured into CrossFitness so that every day I can remind myself of how old I really am. So kind of a quick background. And the only other thing I've done recently, which I'm proud of as well, is I've been writing articles for Fast Company magazine, mostly about culture and leadership development. So that's a kind of 50,000-foot quick overview.
Great. And I look forward to diving into some of that, especially culture and some of the other things that you had brought up there. Real quick for our audience, as you know, they're in the complex technical B2B selling niche of the world of the sales profession. Can you walk a little bit through just your background, just real quick, high level on what you've done in your career from a sales leadership perspective and in the tech industry specifically, just to give them a sense of your background?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So for 2/3 of my career, really the first 2/3, I was engaged in, sales roles, sales leadership roles, as well as running a large division of a public company. At one point, I had 120 B2B, high-end sales professionals that was selling complex storage solutions to the enterprise world. So I would say over my entire career, I've probably had, 400, 450 sales professionals that I've managed. With the focus of selling a complex, long-term sales cycle type solution on a global basis. For some part of my career, I was involved in selling complex outsourcing to companies all over the world. So I've spent my fair share of time, directly responsible for and overseeing the complex sales process.
Excellent. And so I just wanted the audience to hear that, because as you're providing, answering the questions today and providing some of your wisdom, some of your expertise from the past, they'll know kind of what you're drawing from there. And then that's one of the reasons why I was really excited to have you on today, is because you've got a really well-balanced career in terms of sales leadership, being in the tech industry for quite some time, going out and being an entrepreneur and building a business, and then helping other entrepreneurs and business leaders grow their organizations, through leadership development, through culture development, and even sales leadership coaching, sales management consulting. So I thought, wow, what a great guest to have on here to share some wisdom here. So we're just going to dive right into our first question. You ready?
Absolutely.
All right. So, first question, same first question I ask all my guests. How do you define sales integrity, or what it means for a sales professional to demonstrate integrity while selling?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah. So to me, the integrity part, it's really being mindful in what you do. So when you're a sales professional, you need to really listen to what your customer needs. You want to make sure that you're building the best solution possible for that specific customer. And I also feel from an integrity perspective, it's really important to feel personally responsible for the long-term success of your client. So, for all you, great sales reps out there, feel responsible for what you're doing for your customers. There's a huge amount of integrity in what you say to customers. And the ultimate sign of integrity to me is when a client will refer you to other people with similar needs. So, take your role really personally, because at the end of the day, my reputation is all that I have. I have no specific IP or product that I've developed. It's my reputation in the marketplace. So integrity is about just doing what's right and doing what you say you're going to do all the time for your customers.
Yeah. And personal responsibility. I love that. And as you and I have talked in the past, and as you know, at Sales Integrity, we really teach that funded entrepreneur mindset where a sales professional should look at themselves as a funded entrepreneur. The company happens to be their venture capitalists. They provide all the employees, all the investment into the business that they need. Sales professional needs to look at their sales business as their own enterprise. They're just simply funded by the company. So they can go out and take it, be personally responsible for that success. You look at it a little bit differently if you see yourself as a entrepreneur and a business owner of your sales enterprise versus I'm a full-time employee and a sales professional, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, the customer sees you as the face to the business. So, it's your personal reputation and word that's on the line with the client. So, it's important to understand that responsibility that comes along with the recommendations you make.
Yep, exactly. Now, Barry, at Sales Integrity, we have a mantra we repeatedly teach the sales professionals that we coach, and that mantra is make your sales pop to achieve your goals. Now, POP is naturally an acronym, right? And it stands for preparation, organization, and productivity. And what we found is that these are the key habits of all top sales achievers that we've been fortunate enough to coach. And one thing I wanted to bring up is that Barry and I have coached side by side at organizations. He became certified, a Sales Integrity certified sales coach. And I've been fortunate enough to watch Barry deliver some excellent coaching and receive great feedback from our customers, any engagements we put him on. So Barry's very familiar with this make your sales pop mindset mantra. But given that, Barry, the next three questions are going to address those three core competencies, and I want to get your take on each one. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Question number one, how can sales professionals improve the way they prepare for any step in the sales process?
Yeah, so I'll go back to mindfulness. I think it's always important for the sales professional to know exactly where they are in the sales process. So every company might have a different number of steps or stages, but we need to know where we are in the sales process. What step or stage are we in at that particular moment? And when we're making a sale, what we're really doing is we're moving from the first stage to the second stage to the third stage to the fourth stage. We're going through this process. So the preparation is knowing where you are, paying attention to where you are, and making sure you're doing the right thing to get them to the next stage. It's, a good football analogy would be getting a first down, getting a first down, getting a first down. Eventually you score some points. Same thing with sales is prepare for getting to the next step and then prepare to get to the next step. So it's just a sequence of steps, which is really the selling journey that we go through.
Excellent. Next question. What is the best tip, technique, or tool to help sales professionals get more organized?
Well, that's a pretty open-ended question there. So
Pick one.
Tip, technique, or tool. So because of what I've been doing the last few years, working with, personality assessments and really trying to understand people, what I've come to realize is everybody's a little bit different. So what we need to do as coaches or managers or mentors is we want to make sure we help our reps leverage the right tools and technology that helps them get organized. So there are some reps out there that are extremely specific and exacting, and they need an actual daily checklist of what they need to do every single day. Then there's other reps out there that are a little bit more visionary and creative. They might not work well with the daily checklist. So we've got to find a system that works for them. So in my world, what I like to use is I like to use tools like Evernote is a wonderful tool where I take all my notes. I keep track of all my information. I think it's absolutely critical for every sales professional to use a CRM tool. And of course, our infamous, quarterly sales plan. I'm a big believer that every salesperson needs to have a documented sales plan that guides them through, their particular process on how they're going to be successful. So many tools out there. There's great tools for mobile. There's great tools for the desktop. I like to match the tool for the person, but I definitely feel strong that you need to have some technology. We got to get away from manual labor and start to leverage these wonderful platforms that are out there, of which many of them are like $5 a month. So there's tools out there that are extremely affordable that can make us more productive.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to the third question. Maybe you answered it within that second one, which is how can a sales professional improve productivity to get more done in less time?
Yeah, another great question. So Sean, what I recently did about 6 months ago was I had a rep that I was working with that thought that they were killing it. And I went through this exercise with them to try to determine how productive they really were. So I built a little sales productivity tool in a spreadsheet, and it showed me how productive this rep was with using their time based on the results that they were producing. And what was interesting was when I ran the data against this rep, their productivity was like 7%. So I said, wow, this rep is really not very productive. So then I ran that tool against 10 other people. And what I found was most reps are between 8 and 15% productive, which means that they're not productive most of the time. So in trying to answer your question in terms of how do we improve productivity, what I found is that most reps are spending a lot of their time doing things that do not produce results. So the two things I try to focus on is one, trying to get the rep to really understand and master time management. What's important, what's urgent, what do I really need to do every day? And also how to qualify. I really believe that a lot of reps are spending a lot of time meeting with people that are not qualified, that will never buy. So I really focus in on productivity through time management, and I try really hard to teach reps how to qualify properly. Because if you can go from 10% productive to 25% productive, your income goes up exponentially. So time management is critical, and really learning how to qualify is absolutely critical, because why would I want to spend 50% of my time meeting with people that are never going to buy from me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fascinating study. So 8 to 15% productive, most reps. So that is obviously real research. You rolled up your sleeves and you're kind of in the trenches in a one-on-one coaching type environment with these different reps. So that's really fascinating to understand that. Not, in doing the same thing and working with sales professionals, and especially those that are struggling, that's not necessarily surprising to me, but it's helpful to put a percentage around that, and it's a lot lower than most people would it's probably going to surprise people. It's a lot lower than they would expect, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, Sean, what as you can imagine, the look on their face when I tell them that, it'd be like, hey, based on what you just shared with me, you're spending 6 months of the year meeting with people that never produce results. Why don't you stop doing that and spend more time doing research and preparing to meet the people that you want to meet? It's the expression that you get is priceless. But what I found is by creating the spreadsheet, it becomes more real that intuitively I know they're not productive.
Yeah, because I'm assuming on the spreadsheet, they know the rules of the game. They know what you're tracking, right? So here's kind of the things we're looking at, and they either buy into that or they don't. But if they see it and it's tangible, based on, I don't know what's on your spreadsheet, but I'm assuming, knowing you, it's tangible, it's realistic, it's something that they probably buy into, then they're gonna be more apt to do something about it, right?
Exactly. It's their data. So it's what they tell me that I'm just calculating. So I'll send you a copy of it. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
It'd be great. I'd love to take a look at that. Fascinating. So as the audience can hear, Barry really specializes in assessing people, understanding what they're doing well, but also where they need to improve, and then helping them improve in that area. So there's a lot of assessment going on, right, Barry? Tell us a little bit about the assessment of people that you do within your work, and specifically, I believe you're producing like not personality profiles, but just like personal development profiles, productivity profiles. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And the question I have at the end of that is there a profile of a perfect sales professional?
Wow. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. So over the last 2 years, Sean, I've been working with some third-party assessment tools. And typically when I start with a new client or an individual, I like to run the assessment, and it gives me a detailed 20-page report on the person that I'm going to be working with. And it gives me some very powerful insights into, elements of their personality, some of their traits. So what I've found in using these tools is when I run the assessment, there's 40 different possible personality profiles that come out of this tool. Of the 40, 8 of the 40 are what I would call ideal for where we want to see a sales professional. So since we don't have a lot of time, and this is a topic that I can go on for hours, to really give you a brief answer, the 3 traits that I'm looking for in a great sales professional is, number one, I want somebody who's got an extremely strong outgoing personality, someone who's very optimistic, they're friendly, they get along well with people, because if you're not outgoing and you can't get along well with people, I would be concerned from a sales perspective. The second is I want to see someone that's got very strong urgent traits, someone that's very action-oriented, they're very eager to get things done, they're optimistic, they love those types of fast change, fast pace. And the third is I want somebody that's a little bit controlling from the perspective of they love challenges, they love action, they love producing results. So if you could take somebody who is a combination of a little bit controlling, a lot outgoing, and a lot urgent, you now have a person that wakes up every day with this urgent desire to go out and meet people, but the controlling is what gives them the ability to influence people to do things that they might not want to do. As we know from our careers, selling is not easy. You have to persuade people and convince people and show people to think differently to a solution you're trying to sell. So those 3 traits in combination are extremely powerful with sales professionals. It doesn't mean if you don't have those traits, you can't be successful. But from a statistical perspective, if you have those traits, your odds just go up.
Yeah, so it means you're better hardwired for success, right? It's in your DNA more if you have those 3 traits: outgoing, urgent, controlling, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's also interesting. 8 out of the 40 profiles kind of match up as ideal. You're right. We could probably do another whole episode on that, but I think you really gleaned some great value there for our audience to kind of look at their personality and do a quick assessment and say, do I need to develop my skills to be a little bit more outgoing? People are either introverts or extroverts, but they can learn how to be more communicative and more interactive. And there are things they could do to work on that, right? And same thing with urgent and controlling. These are skills you just learn and develop. Those are more choices. Your personality might be a little more hardwired, but you can still work on it and improve in any area, right?
Absolutely. Anyone can improve at anything. It just makes it a little bit easier when they start with certain traits that are more conducive for that job.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. It's just like, in life, right? Some people are born into wealth and they have a little bit more of a head start there, and others have to work their way from the bottom to the top. Right. So it's no different in life than it is in sales. You just got to understand what those traits are and what you need to do to get there. Right.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So let's shift a little bit to culture. I think you're doing some real fascinating work in terms of culture. So why don't you just share a quick high level on here's what I'm doing from a culture perspective, but let's dive a little bit into a specific culture question in terms of sales culture. How important is sales culture? Is there an ideal sales culture where sales professionals can thrive? That I'd love to get your take on culture and share that with our audience as well.
Yeah, when we get into the culture conversation, it gets a little bit more complex because typically, and in my world, Sean, today I'm dealing with, let's just call them small to medium-sized businesses, which is different than enterprise. But if you're a sales professional and you're going to be working in a small to medium-sized company, the leader of the company, the owner of the company, typically dictates the culture. So to me, the culture is really the behaviors that you find in that particular organization. So from a sales perspective, we want to make sure that even though the sales rep might have the perfect personality traits to be successful as a salesperson, the culture match is really more of a values match, a behaviors match. So we want to make sure that the sales professional shares the same common values as the company. And to me, the values is kind of the bottom of the pyramid. It's the foundation of building an organization. The values is what leads to trust. So sometimes you'll find a rep who's an awesome rep, but they might be working in a culture that is very slow and supportive. So the example I like to give is, imagine you're a sales professional and you're an extremely aggressive sales professional. Would you rather go sell for the Marines or for a hospital, right? The hospital is going to have a different culture than the Marines. So we want to make sure that the rep is working in an environment, a culture that has behaviors that support who they are as an individual. So a little bit different than the personality traits. It's more about the values and the behaviors. I've seen lots of great salespeople fail and be miserable in the wrong culture. And I've seen lots of, sales reps thrive in a company that has the opposite culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite interesting. So if we continue on with the culture discussion and kind of get into values, as you talked about, there's a huge, component of the workforce now that are made up of what everyone's calling millennials, right? And when it comes to millennials, I know you have a lot of experience of through your culture side of the business, working with organizations that are employing millennials. What's your take there? I mean, I'd be interested in, how are they doing from a sales perspective? Is there a different way to motivate and manage them? Or is this much ado about nothing? It's just the next generation coming through and people make a big deal out of millennials versus other generations. I'd be interested in your take and how that affects the overall sales organization, just sales profession in general.
Yeah, so I think on the millennials, it's a little bit blown out of proportion in terms of it's not as big an issue as other people's make it to be, from my perspective. No different than when we were younger. It goes back to the different personality profiles. So when I run my assessments on millennials, once again, they fall within those 40 different personality traits. But what I am seeing with millennials, which is very different than, let's say, baby boomers, which is where I am, is with the millennials, you have to make sure that you've got a technology-enabled environment. They love tools. They love technology. They love mobile. They love to collaborate. They're more comfortable working in a collaborative environment. Don't put them in an environment with high cubes where they can't talk to each other. They like to be independent. They like to work different hours. So if you could find a millennial that's got the right skills, put them in an environment that works for them, they'll produce incredible results. On the flip side, if you take a millennial and put them in an environment where, there's no social media platform, they're not allowed to collaborate, they're using archaic tools, very structured, 9 to 5, no flexibility, doesn't typically work. So there are some generational issues that sit on top of the personality issues, but it's really the tools and the mobile, and they're also very smart. I mean, think about it, Sean. When we were 18, 19 years old, we didn't have access to all this information like the younger generation. They're extremely bright and have extremely strong opinions of what's going on in the world, which I could tell you I didn't have when I was 18 years old.
Nope, I agree. Yeah, so I think like any generation, first of all, that was a great perspective on it. And like any generation, every generation can be different. So the leadership, the leaders of each company, of each enterprise, of sales organizations really just need to understand each of the different generations, what makes them tick. And it's leadership 101, right? I mean, you got to really meet people where they're at and motivate them in different ways. Everyone's a little bit different. You bring up the technology-enabled kind of workforce or work environment, and that's a great shift into our next question here, because you talked about social and stuff like that, and I want to shift gears into social selling. That seems to be a real hot topic these days, as you most likely know. Use of social technology such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and others have really taken the selling scene by storm. So given that, what's your take on the use of social technologies in a complex technical B2B selling world?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to answer this, Sean, from the perspective of professional service sales. So when I think of social selling as a platform, to me, the social sites, it's really all about establishing yourself as a thought leader. So if you think of LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and the myriad of other platforms, because those platforms are out there and our target market are on those platforms, I like to think of leveraging those platforms so that I could establish myself as a thought leader. If our target market is reading content on social, then we want to make sure that we're producing content that we could share with our target market and establish ourselves as a credible thought leader in whatever line of business we're in. So I think of the social more as the establishment of thought leadership, the education, the awareness, so that people will consume content written by me so that they know that I am an expert in that particular field. So when they have a need or an issue arises, they're going to seek out people that have expertise in a particular market. So it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, but it's certainly worth it. So social to me is really about the education and the ability to establish yourself as a thought leader. And I know I follow lots of people on social media that are, brilliant business minds, and I just love consuming their content. And it's just awesome when somebody publishes something. I have access to it anytime I want, pretty much 24/7.
So let me ask you along those lines. So you have people you follow on social. You love their point of view. You love what the content they're providing. You see it as valuable, obviously. So let's say one of them reached out to you, whether they called you, they sent you an email and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you a little bit. You're in a position of, you're in your role. You're in a similar role that my current customers are in. They experience these issues, and I'd like to just get your opinion on this. I'd like to understand from you your take on it, or if they had some sort, even if you knew they were overtly selling but they weren't being pushy, they just said, "Hey, I want to share with you what we're doing to help your peers." How would you react to that?
So for me personally, if I was following them and reading their content and they reached out to me, it's a safe conversation versus a stranger calling me trying to potentially try to sell me something. So if I'm following a person and they're writing great stuff on, say, digital marketing, and then I get contacted by them, I would be more comfortable having that conversation with them, only because in my mind I've established some type of a digital relationship with them. I read their materials. It's safer for me. So I'd be more prone to engage in that dialogue than if some stranger just reached out to me, which happens to me all day. I'm getting 5 to 7 emails every day from strangers.
Yeah.
So it just makes it a little bit safer when they've seen your face, they've heard your words, they've heard your stories.
Yeah. Yeah. So that it's just interesting because you're now, you've connected with them. You feel like you know them through the kind of the virtual you version of them, right? The virtual them is out there selling and adding value and pumping out value-based content and stuff like that. So it just brings the guard down a bit, right? When they reach out to you. And I ask you that question, obviously, because the sales professionals today are trying to make sense of social media, social selling. What does that mean? And most all the gurus are going to tell you, you got to create, your point of view. You got to create, establish yourself as an authority figure and have the information out there. And I think that's now commonly known. And right now in social, to me, I see kind of two camps. Those that most camps know, I guess there's three. Those that don't know that, they're ignorant to it. And then the two other camps that really understand, I got to start creating value-based content. There's one that just fears it, doesn't do it because they don't know how to do it, and the other ones that are doing it. And so now there's this sea of content out there from various competitors. It's early on, but there still is a lot where people know that. One thing you've done is, I believe you've taken a little bit of a step further. You're being published on Fast Company, right?
That's correct. Yep.
So my question here is, we had Jim Fortin on. He was our last guest that we had on, and he talked about it's got to be new, different, and unique, right? And so now there's all this content out there. How are you new, different, and unique in your content versus your competitor pumping out content in the same topic, right? And I think there's just different ways to push the envelope. And one thing is, talk about your experience with Fast Company. What has that done for your brand? That's new, unique, different. Everyone's putting their own content out, but yet here's Barry, who's published on Fast Company. Not that there's not a lot of thought leaders that are, but that kind of is another echelon up, isn't it?
Yeah, the advantage of that is it's a brand that people recognize, so it gives you a little bit of credibility versus a platform that no one heard of. So what I try to do with my content, Sean, is, because there's a million people writing about what I'm writing about. I mean, I'm writing about culture and leadership, and there's lots of great people writing about it. I'm just trying to create relevant stories and examples. So when somebody consumes my content, what I'm hoping they do is they read something and then they say, wow, that was interesting. That was enlightening. I never thought about that. That's important to me. So what I'm trying to do is just get them to hear examples of how other people are doing things. So it's really more case study, testimonial type stuff of, here are some examples how other people are doing things. Because if I was to read an article on 5 ways to be a more effective sales coach, that would be of interest to me. I would read that and I would consume that content. So I'm just trying to make it relevant. I'm trying to make it simple and easy to understand. And so far it's been about 2 years. And so the way it's helped me, and it's been fascinating, is when my article gets published, Fast Company actually sends out a tweet under the Fast Company brand
Mm-hmm.
And it goes out to like 2 million people around the world. So I get contacted from people all over the place saying, hey, Barry, I read your article and that was interesting, or I read your article and I totally disagree with what you said, which is okay. So I get a lot of dialogue associated with my articles. So it's given me the opportunity to talk to people all over the world who have read my stuff and they want to engage in some conversation. So it's a brand promoter. So if you're going to create content, make sure your content gets published by someone who has a huge following. My following is, in my mind, it's not big. In others, it's large, but I don't have 2 million followers. I might have 3,000 followers. So if you're going to publish content, put your content in the hands of people that have 1 million followers and sit back and watch what happens. It'll be fun.
That's awesome. That's great advice. I'm glad I asked you that question because you really kind of brought that home, that point home. That's great. So Barry, if social selling is all the rage these days, then its chief rival that is equally polarizing is the tactic of cold calling, right? So let me ask you, do you believe, there's two camps here, those that say cold calling is dead and the others that say, they're just staunch supporters. I kind of liken it to, after the recent elections, I don't like talking politics, but it's very polarizing. Either, most people seem to be in one camp or the other, and they just kind of stand their ground with it. So it's kind of the same thing with cold calling versus social selling. So what's your take on cold calling? Is it dead? Is it alive? How is it applicable if it is applicable today?
Yeah. So when I think about cold calling or social or all these other choices, think of like a pitcher in baseball that can throw 5 different types of pitches. So one of your choices is cold calling, right? So anyone that's out selling, cold calling is one of the many tactics that has worked for 1 million years in sales, and it can absolutely work today for the right type of person with the right type of mindset. So while cold calling is not the sexiest thing to do, and many sales reps don't enjoy doing it, it works. So if you're going to make enough calls with the right message and the right intention, it could be extremely effective. So I have clients right now, Sean, that the only source of generating leads is through cold calling. And I have other clients right now that will argue with me and say cold calling doesn't work and it's dead. So I'm not going to have a wrestling match with a business owner to convince them of something. That's their belief. They're entitled to that.
Yep.
But for those that think it works, you could typically get a lower priced person to follow a script and do it effectively to generate leads, but it's got to be done like with intention, and it's got to be done with great messaging, and you got to keep tweaking it and fine tuning it. So it's definitely not dead, but I can tell you this, more than half of the sales reps that I know don't like doing it because it goes against their DNA of, they like the freedom and the independence. They don't like to be stuck making the calls. It's tough, but it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Just always like to get each of our guests' opinion on that because these are two polarizing topics, right? So that's why I asked those questions. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience. And at this point, Barry, we're nearing the end of our time together today. So that means one thing on the Sales Integrity Podcast, it's time for the sales cycle. Now, the sales cycle is not only a process that all sales professionals have to manage, it, as you well know, but it's also the name of our lightning round, where I ask questions in rapid fire format and look for quick answers from our guests. So to make it fun, I'm going to time it. Barry, I time all our guests. And currently our previous guest, Jim Fortin, set the benchmark with a 2-minute and 11-second sales cycle. So that's the time to beat. You think you can do it?
I guess being from New York, I could speak so fast people won't understand me. So let's do it.
Now, keep one thing in mind. Keep one thing in mind, though. We there's a balance between speed and value. So I want to make sure that it's good to be succinct, but we want to make sure that our audience can glean some value out of it instead of just one word or quick one sentence answer. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to time it. And there's only 7 questions, so I'll go through 7 questions. I'll ask the questions as quickly as I can do it. And then the floor will be yours to answer those. So we're going to get ready to go, and I'm going to start our timer right now. So first question, name a specific technology or tool you use for identifying and researching target market prospects.
Yeah, so I would say LinkedIn continues to be a great tool that I use for researching target market, building lists of people. I currently have probably about 5 different lists going on right now within LinkedIn. I'm tracking and monitoring very specific target markets. And every week I'm getting incremental updates from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn to me has been by far my favorite and the best tool so far.
Great. Question 2. What is the best way to initially get the attention of and connect with your target market prospects?
All right. So other than the obvious, which is a referral from a known person,
Mm-hmm.
what seems to work best for me is I try to understand as much as I can about that person, and I want to send them very relevant information that's important to them. So I try to think of what's important to them, and if I know what's important to them, I'm going to try to send them meaningful content that can enhance their position, just to kind of stay in their minds.
Great. And that leads to the third question. What method do you use to consistently stay top of mind if your prospects aren't ready to buy just yet?
So that's an easy one for me. Everyone that I meet, Sean, I try to make introductions. If I can help people meet other people that are important to them, they always seem to remember. So it's helping people by introducing them to high quality introductions.
Outstanding. Love it. Question 4. What sales process methodology do you use to manage opportunities through your sales cycle and sales pipeline?
Yeah, so for me, I use a CRM tool called Zoho. I've been using it for, 6-7 years now. So I've basically developed a process that works for me. I've got, 6 stages in the sales process, and helps me understand exactly where I am with each customer. I run reports weekly, so I know what stage I'm on. The thing that's important to me, Sean, on this is I always want to know what's next. I keep focusing on what's next, because what's next is what moves me from stage 1 to 2 to 3, et cetera.
Yeah, great. Question 5. How do you define the concept of closing a sale?
Yeah, so closing the sale is just another stage in the sales process. And actually, when you close the sale, one process has ended and now the new process begins. So now the fun begins after you've closed the sale, particularly for me, because once I've closed the sale, now I've got to go deliver the goods, add value to the client, and hopefully get referrals from them. So it's the end of one process. It's the start of a new process.
Okay. Question 6. How do you know when it's time to close a sale for any given deal?
Wow. Really, it's based on many different criteria, depending on the client, depending on the time of month, whether it's the budget, if it's end of year, is the money going away? Can I upsell additional services? So I would say that's a very complex question that has many different criteria. It's easy for me to say it's intuitive, but sometimes it's not. It's paying attention to the customer and making sure that you're asking for the order before the opportunity disappears.
Yep. And final question, last question here. What is your best advice for sales achievers to improve their closing ratio?
All right, to improve their closing ratio. So let's see, 3 things. One would be always be prepared to ask great questions. And with those questions, you want to create a sense of urgency. Always remember to articulate the value of what you're selling and the benefit to the customer. And don't ever stop qualifying. Keep qualifying, because what looks like a deal today could change tomorrow based on the economy or a new person joining the company. So those 3 come to mind.
Great. All right. Congrats. You closed the deal. You've now completed the sales cycle. You ready for your time?
I'm ready.
3 minutes and 39 seconds. So Jim still holds the crown.
All right.
No worry. But that was good. I think actually yours was the second fastest, I believe, out of the 4 that we've had so far in our early stages of the podcast here. But I thought that was great value that you provided, some very good quick hit advice that could be very applicable right away for, and actionable right away for our listeners. So it's time to wrap up the show. And what we like to do is have you wrap up the show with your number 1 piece of advice for complex technical B2B sellers and how people can best connect with you.
Great. Yeah. So for all you B2B sellers out there, regardless of, where you're working, what type of business you work for, I like to remind you to think of yourself as the CEO. You're the chief executive officer of your life, right? You've chosen the sales profession, which is the greatest profession in the world if you want to have unlimited income and lifestyle opportunities. So you have to wake up tomorrow morning and remind yourself, I am the CEO of my life. I've got to start to act and behave like a CEO. So make sure that you're prepared, make sure you're organized, make sure you're productive, and the buck stops with you. Stop making excuses. You are the CEO. It's your responsibility to produce results. So if you could shift your mindset from I'm a sales guy to I'm a CEO, you might see some changes in your behavior. So I like to challenge my sales professionals to become CEOs, because they're responsible for the success of their business.
Great. And how can people best connect with you?
My website is saltzmaneg.com, and my email is barry@saltzmaneg.com.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your time today, Barry. I really appreciate it and enjoyed the show and interacting back and forth with you, and just know that our audience is going to glean a lot of great value from that. So I appreciate that. And thank you to all of the sales achievers out there who took the time to listen to today's show. I appreciate it and look forward to everyone applying some of those sales wisdom ideas that Barry provided during today's interview. So now let's wrap up today's episode with some quick reminders. First, we recently launched 2 new B2B tech sales professional groups, one on LinkedIn and one on Facebook. Just search for B2B tech sales professionals on either LinkedIn or Facebook, or both if you want to join both groups, and join the conversation with your peers there. Second, if you haven't already subscribed to our free 7-day video email course titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling, then you can do so by visiting mastercomplexselling.com. Again, that's mastercomplexselling.com, or you can text the word SI course, so as in sales integrity, SI course, all one word with no spacing in between. If you send it with a space between SI and course, you'll receive an error message back. So text the word SI course to the number 44222. After subscribing, we will send you your first lesson via email right away on day 1, and then one for the next 6 days. Third, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud. Just search for the Sales Integrity Podcast with Sean Piket, and it should pop up and allow you to subscribe on one of those 2 channels. After you subscribe, please provide a quick 5-star rating and simple 1 to 2 sentence review to help others find the show. To provide a review on iTunes isn't as simple as you think. You can't do so directly within the podcast. What you have to do is actually click on the search icon, then type in Sales Integrity, and you will see my podcast there. Now, I'm referring to the purple podcast icon. When you click on that on your iPhone, brings up the main podcast center. Down below, you'll see the search icon. So click on that, type in Sales Integrity, and you'll see the podcast there. Click on the podcast. In it, you'll see the reviews tab in the middle there. Just click on that. And once there, you could provide a 5-star rating and simple 1 or 2 sentence review. Now, since iTunes prioritizes shows with the most ratings and reviews higher than those that have just a few of them, this will dramatically help the show be found by more people. So I greatly appreciate it. And finally, please share the podcast with your colleagues and friends who would find it relevant. You can do so by going to salesintegrity.com and click on the Sales Integrity Podcast menu link at the top of the page. All of the podcasts are there, and it provides you a way to click a button and share any episode, whether via email directly to individuals, or there's buttons there to share it on the various social media sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So I would greatly appreciate it if you spread the word about the show on social media to help grow it. And finally, that'll do it for today's episode. Now go out there in the sales world today and help your prospects and customers buy what they want, what they need, and what benefits them. And most importantly, go out there and make it a great day.